You have the latent ability everyone does with this potential to be empathetic, but it is a muscle that must be exercised, because if you don't, you'll simply become very self-absorbed and you won't make those connections. You'll be just locked inside of yourself. So people have this notion of empathy, which I think is a little bit false or a little bit small or thin, and it's actually a larger phenomenon. So I don't think of empathy just as the ability to sympathize with someone, to kind of understand them. To me, it's not an intellectual process. It's an emotional, it's a visceral process. It's nonverbal, really. And it's very powerful. And what it means is you're able to stop your internal monologue and focus deeply on another person and put yourself in their place and understand what it might feel like to be them. You can never read people's minds. Let's say I'm shopping in a supermarket. I can't know what that person's thoughts is who's serving me fish behind the counter or whatever. It's impossible. But by paying attention, by opening myself up, by feeling empathy for that person who has this job, I can understand how they might feel in that moment. I can pay attention to their body language, to their energy. I can understand that they hate their job, that they're miserable, that they're not paid enough, etc. Or I can understand they love their job. I can't understand what they're thinking about, etc. But I can connect to their moods, their emotions. And you could go around during the course of the day and you can practice this as an exercise. And I do it all the time because I'm a writer and because that's basically what I'm supposed to be doing in life, is putting myself in other people's shoes. And in fact, when I go through history and I'm reading a book on Napoleon, or I'm reading a book about Genghis Khan, or all these other historicals I've written about, I actually do try to do the same thing. I try to go, what did it feel like to be them in that moment? Because we have this incredibly powerful muscle. It's literally what makes us human. It's these mirror neurons that I actually put my mind in your place and imagine what you might be feeling in that particular moment. It's a kind of visceral connection that you have to people, to their moods and to their emotions. And it's very, very important as a social skill that you develop this. You have the latent ability everyone does, born as a human being, with this potential to be empathetic. But it is a muscle that must be exercised, because if you don't, you'll simply become very self-absorbed and you won't make those connections. You won't pay attention to that person behind the counter, what they might be feeling at the moment. You'll be just locked inside of yourself. And as this occurs day after day after day, that empathy muscle gets weak and weaker and weaker until it atrophies and you don't even have it anymore. You become so rigid and so locked inside of yourself. Okay, so it's very, very important. Now the question is, and it's a legitimate question that people asked it before, can you go too far with empathy? And yes, it is possible. So a lot of people who get involved with toxic personalities, they feel for them, because toxic people don't announce themselves. They don't go, I'm aggressive, I'm a narcissist, I'm grandiose. They're very clever, they're very charming. They can be very seductive and interesting when you first meet them. And you feel empathy for them because they also maybe, they have some pain in their life and you can sense it and you open up to them. And then they prey on that openness. They prey on your ability that you've opened up too much to them. You become too vulnerable. You empathize too much to the point where you can't distance yourself. Okay? So the point of empathy is to be able to get yourself inside other people's shoes. But there's a limit to it. You can't become them. You can't so identify with yourself that their problems become your problems. You can understand their problems. You can maybe try and help them. But at a certain point, you put your hand up and you go, I'm not going past this particular point, because the energy that's involved, if they are a toxic person, will suck me up. It's what I call in the 48 laws of power, infection. And that's the negative side of empathy, where you get involved with an infecting person and you can't disentangle yourself from them. When I'm going around practicing empathy, I'm not involved with these people. I'm just imagining who they are. When I'm interacting with someone who's a colleague or a friend, There's a level of trust there. I know who they are. And if I empathize and I understand why they're in pain, it's a positive thing. But if there's a stranger that has entered my life, I'm a little bit wary of them, like you should be with any stranger, where you should have a little bit of distance and go, can I trust them? Are they a person that has good intentions? Could they possibly be toxic? And in the laws of human nature, I give you ideas about how you can identify these toxic people before you get involved. So you practice empathy as a day-to-day thing. And when it comes to people that you know that you interact with every day and it's a new person in your life, you have just a little bit of wariness where you feel them out and you go, can I trust them with involving myself emotionally with these people? So that's how I think those are the limits to empathy for me.